Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. In this video I want to revisit my series Build Worlds, because in one of the latest videos to that series Build Worlds I've had a few comments and feedback, some positive and some questioning the logic behind the material itself. May I say rightly so. With the way it was built and the reason why they're only showing 2 layers, and there's various other comments like I've got a really bad memory. Well, let's just say there's quite a few comments about how they're only getting 2 layers showing, the rest of the masks are not showing, and there is a really good explanation for this. But before I do explain and go into detail as to why this is happening, I do want to offer my apologies, because I've kind of, I wouldn't say abandoned, I've got diverted away from the Build Worlds series, because we got to a certain stage where everything looked okay and I started building a water shader like the river you're seeing on the screen now, and then I went on to the Asset Master Material series, and I've kind of diverted myself away from the Build World series. So for that reason I apologise, and I apologise for the fact that we have got an unfinished landscape shader. So that's why I'm here today, because I want to go over some reasons why you're only seeing 2 layers on the shader itself, and why your other masks or layers are not showing up. There's a really good explanation for this, and it's really simple as well. I've also had comments about how I've gone from one kind of landscape to another, just over 1 video or 2 videos, I'm not sure. The reason behind that is very, very simple and easy. Essentially I started the series off using a free version of Gaia. We created the landscape, we created the mask for it, and then over 1 video I went and paid for Gaia. I've got Gaia and I can use it now, and I can create extra large landscapes, import more masks and all that good stuff. And I understand from maybe a beginner point of view how that may change in the eyes of someone trying to learn how to create the material and Gaia and all that good stuff, but the logic behind my videos is still the same. So imagine you go to the store or shop or whatever, and you and your friend go in to buy cans of pop or Coke or soda if you're American, and you both go to the same store or shop. One of you buys 5 cans of soda or Coke and your other friend buys 3. The logic's still there. You're both still purchasing with currency to get your cans of soda or pop, whatever, but one of you's got more cans than the other, and that's essentially what has happened over that transition of 1 video. I've essentially got a bigger landscape with a few more masks. The logic behind the material and the way we import the masks and all that good stuff is still the same. It's just that I'll have more masks. You could have 2 masks on your landscape if you want. You could have a slope and a ground main. You could have 3 masks. I chose to have, I think it's 6. You could have 4. It's completely down to you and how you want your landscape to be set out. So I'm not quite sure about the comments on how things are changing overnight with the masks and all that. It's the same logic, the same workflow, but I just have more masks than you may do, or you may have more masks than I do. You know, it's just one of them things. You just got to realise that the logic is still the same, but I just got more masks than what you would have, essentially. Okay, so now I've covered that up, I want to draw back to the reasons why we're only getting 2 layers. As you can see on my material instance here, I've got my slope detection, which is working just fine, as you can see. I've got my layer blending, which is not the best, as you can see here. It's not the best blending. That's something I want to rectify in this video as well. And And that's essentially it. So I've got layer blending, which blends each mask together, but it's not working, of course, because we're only showing 2 masks up. And I'm going to close this down and go through now why this is happening. So if I open my master material, you'll see here I have my slope detection. So this logic here is my slope detection, and this layer, this mask or layer if you like, needs something to detect for the slope detection to work. So as you can see here, I've got a declaration reroute node, and that is fed from this ground primary here. Now at the time we did this, I didn't think too much into it, but essentially the ground primary and the slope main are just communicating with each other, and it's cancelling out the other 4 layers or 4 masks if you like in our landscape shader. And that is why, as you can see here, I'm getting a ground primary and my slope main. That's the reason why we're getting that. Now it's down to you if you want to cancel out the slope detection bit and just have it feeding from here into the output. I'm not going to do that because I want to keep the slope detection, because it'll keep that nice transition at the base here between the slopes. I definitely want to keep the slope detection. And the issue we get with this, if I come back to the scene and I go in select mode and choose landscape, you'll see here I have layers. I have an auto layer, I won't worry about that just now, and I have these other layers which represent the layers which are here in this master material, and that's what these layers are. So when we come to manage, and you'll see I'm on the import tab already, I've got the layers here which are all set up and ready to go. These are where we imported the masks that we got from Gaia. So imagine you've imported these masks fresh, they've come in here and they're sat here waiting to be used. If I come back to select mode to speed the engine up a bit, and I'll come to my landscape material, and you'll see here I have a layer stack. I did have a few comments about this, about how I don't showcase how to build a layer stack. The reason I do showcase how to build it, or I explain how to build it, rather than build the whole thing itself, because it's quite an easy function to build. So if I open the layer stack, and remember that we imported our masks to the landscape editor section of the engine, and them masks that we imported there are then communicated directly to these landscape sample nodes. So the masks we put in the landscape, imported into the landscape section, are directly communicating with this, and then it comes out of there and communicates into this output node. If I go back to my landscape material, this is the output node, and you'll see I've got the ground primary, which is a declaration reroute node, and it travels all the way back up here to this ground primary, which is then sent into my layer blending node, which is here. It is sent through this input, and then I'm able to change the blending here, and that is what was in that material instance, the layer blending. Now that's the way the layer stack works. You just right click and type landscape sample, and you'll see you get a landscape layer sample. The name of this can be changed here in the details panel, but it's got to match the imported mask name that you give it, so that has to match it, and you essentially get a landscape sample node and name it after the layer you want to name. And you've done that, and then with these are the actual masks that we imported to the engine. So if I come back to build worlds, I'll double click on masks, and if you followed the build world series right from the beginning, you'll know that we imported all the masks into here as well, and essentially all I've done is done that, and this texture sample essentially are them. These here are my masks that we imported from Gaia, and there you get the output for it as well. And the layer stack outside of here, if you come here, you'll see I've got a ground primary mask, which is this texture sample here, and That's why I didn't go into massive detail about building the layer stack, because it's fairly simple to build. It's quite an easy bit of logic. But yeah, so now I've gone through a bit of the problem why we're only getting the 2 layers. Like I say, it's the slope detection communicating with our ground primary, and it's cancelling all these other layers out. And there is a good fix for this, because I want to keep my slope detection. It really does help with the landscape itself. There is a real easy fix for this, and it is the layer stack. If I jump in here now, and just where you're seeing ground primary mask, which is this section here, we're currently using this section. We want to use this section here. So the ideal scenario for the way I'm going to build the rest of the landscape material for the remainder of this video is to actually delete these, like so. Just go through and delete all of these. You will get a warning, a message. Just keep deleting them, like so, until you are finished. Now this will completely break your landscape shader. Don't worry about that, we're going to fix it. And just go through and delete all these layers here, like I've done. And then we're going to hit apply. Let's hope it doesn't crash. And if I come back to the scene now, you'll see that it's completely broke the shader. If I come back to build worlds, you'll see I'm getting errors all over the place. And you'll notice that I've left the masks in there. That's because these outputs can use that mask. If I just draw these into each of these outputs, like so, my flow, my height flow, my slope base, and my slope main, and you'll see all my errors have gone, which is fantastic. If I hit apply and just wait for it to make all its changes, I'll come back to the scene now. You'll notice our scene is back, our landscape's on, and now it is showing all the masks that we have on the landscape shader, and that for me is pretty cool. Obviously don't go off the appearance, because these are just the textures that I've used in these particular layers. This section is down to you to go through Quixel Bridge or go through any other various websites on the internet and get whatever textures that you feel is right for your landscape. And then all you'd have to do, I click on my landscape, go back into your material instance. You can see it's all open now, and if I open this up, each and every layer we created, each and every layer we created in our master material here can now have their textures inserted into here. Keep in mind though, the way we built our landscape layers up is to work with Quixel textures, which I'm pretty sure the majority, a good 90% of us will use the Quixel textures. If I go into my layer master, you'll notice here I've got my ORD texture, which is a Quixel version. I've got my roughness, my ambient occlusion, roughness and height. And so the way I set the layer master up is to do with Quixel. So you can easily go up to the plus sign here, go to Quixel Bridge and choose some more textures and actually replace the textures with the kind of textures you want for your landscape. I will do that. I'm not going to bore everyone by doing that in this video, but I will do it off camera and just change all the layers that I want. If you're unsure what layer is using what texture, you could simply easily come into here, and instead of using this, you could cancel this out and just press 3 and get a vector 3. It's not working for me. Click here, hold 3, left click, there you go, and we're getting a vector 3, and you could just change the color of it to whatever color you want and just simply plug it into there, and it will showcase that color on the landscape of which layer that is. So this is essentially, now I've shown you how you can expose all your masks that you've imported, but you're no longer using, if I come back to the landscape mode, you're no longer using these. As you can see, they've all just gone like a darky black because it's all reading from the auto layer. They've all just gone this funny colour now because you're not using them, you're not sampling them layers anymore. If I come to paint, you'll see I've got them all here, but we're not using them because we've deleted them from our layer stack, which is here. And now essentially your landscape is working. Let me close this off because having that open does slow your engine down. I'll close this material instance off. So essentially now, like I say, all our masks are exposed just like they would be if they were imported. But now you're just working straight from the masks that are in here and using them here. Okay, so now we've got that out, I do want to create some sort of blending function here between them. And I want to blend with height. So I'm going to use the height data of each layer to blend between each layer, or mask if you like. The first thing we need to do is come into our layer blending function. If I come to the build world, you'll see here, this function here is called layer blending. I'm going to make some changes in here. Keep in mind you would only have to do this once, because in the build world this layer blending function is the same function for each layer. So if I change one of them, any of them like this, the information I put into here now will feed out between the rest of them. So you only have to change for one layer blend, which is good news. And the changes, what I want to do here, I've got the ability to blend between each mask here, which is fine. I want the ability to blend between the height maps of each layer as well, which is very simple to implement, and it will work out towards the end of the video. And the easiest way we can do this, if we drag off this cheap contrast, and we'll get what's called a multiply node, and I want to multiply into this logic our height map. So if I drag off the B input, just type input and get a function input, you can leave this input type as a scalar parameter, and I'll just type in here height input, like so. That's it for that. So we're going to look here, the set priority is 0, the top material is 1, the layer mask input is 2, and the blend input is 3. So this height input, I want it right at the bottom, so I'm going to put a set priority of 4, like so. So now I've got a layer mask and a height map. That is quite a lot of information for a layer blend standard to handle. All we have to do is simply clamp it. So I'll drag off the output of our multiply and get what's called a saturate node. This node is essentially a clamp. If I right click, type clamp. It's essentially this, but this costs nothing because you can't edit it. Whereas this clamp, both nodes do the exact same thing, whereas you can edit the minimum and maximum value for this clamp, whereas in the saturate node you cannot. And we're simply going to drag off the saturate and put it in the alpha. And that, if we click apply, you'll see now we're getting errors, which is fine. But the point is, we have now got this input for our height input, and we've got an output from our layer, what is meant to go in here. And we're going to do that shortly, but we need to make changes in our master logic material layer. So inside each layer, this is just a random one, you'll see we've got a layer master logic. You should have this because if you followed the tutorials that I've created, you will have a master logic function. If I close that off, I've got my master logic function open here. But once I've made, similar to the layer blending, I can actually save that and close that as well. Similar to the layer blending, once I make a change in this master logic, that is going to filter out between all of these material layers that we've got here, and that'll filter down. That's the power of using functions in materials. It will just filter down. And the changes I want to make are to this height output and this set material attributes. We'll start with this. If we click on the set material attributes and we've got world position offset, we no longer need that. We can just click on the down arrow there and delete it. Keep in mind that change will filter down between all the master logics of the material layers. And now we're left with this output for our height. And I want to give us the ability to change the blending of this particular layer from this layer, if you know what I mean. The way we could do that is by simply using a cheap contrast again. You could multiply it and then get a power node, and this essentially is the same thing, but using a power node is quite expensive, and to use it with all these material layers would create a lot of instructions, and our shader is actually quite heavily non-optimized at the minute, so I'm not going to use that. I'm going to drag off here and get a cheap contrast, just like we're using in our layer blend function. I'm going to get this cheap contrast. I'm going to drag off here and type input and get function input, and we're just going to call this layer dash height dash blend. I'm not going to set a preview here, although I do need to set its set priority. So I've got my ORDs here, oh they're the textures actually. So I've got this, which is 106, then 107, 108. So this I could set as 109 on the set priority. That means this input will be along with these where we do need it, and then we can simply drag off our cheap contrast and put it into the output like so. And now we've made the changes in our master logic. If I hit apply now and then go up to the top and just hit save, and I can actually close the master logic off now, and I can actually save and close the layer stack off, and you'll see we're getting all these errors. There's a dead easy fix for this. Just come to your material layer and you'll see in an earlier tutorial on the series we created this height input. We have actually just been working in it, so you've seen the height output, and all you have to do is insert it into there, and you'll see we're getting an error here. I'll showcase why shortly, but for now what we need to do is to go down the stream and just plug this height in to each input like that. You will get an error, do not worry, we'll go to that in a second. And we're just going to go to each one and just plug the height output into the height input of our layer blend, just like so. And we've got rid of most of them errors now. The reason we're getting this error in our material layer, we have to go in each one now for this bit. If we open we'll start with the ground main, we'll double click it and open it. And the reason we're getting it is because in our master logic we've just created this input. Essentially what we have to do now is just create the scalar parameter to go with it. So this, keeping in mind, is called my ground main. If I right click on this and promote it to a parameter, I'll get rid of the S in parentheses, and I'll come to the layer bit and delete the layer and call this ground dash main, like so, and I'll just click off it and I can just slot that right there. Dead easy, dead simple. And I've actually put browned main, not ground. You bear with me. Just change that to ground instead of browned. And now essentially we've got our scalar parameter in there. If we jump in here, I'm just going to give it a default value of 1. And I'm going to set the group to ground main options, because this is going to be in our options category. And we want to look for the last node. So if I click on that, that's 2, that's 5, that's 1, 3, 6, 4, 8, 7. Right, okay, so 8 is our last one. So for this one, I'm just going to simply set the priority to 9. And that's it. If I hit apply now, it'll automatically take me out of there because I fixed all the errors for this layer. And now we've got that kind of ground main set up. I do need to come into this one and do the exact same thing. So if I double click on this, and we're going to right click on the layer height blend, promote to parameter, get rid of the S in parentheses and change the name. Copying the name that we have here, which is ground second. I'll delete that layer and call it ground second. Like so. And then I'm going to give it its default value of 1, change the group to ground second options, and I know this is going to be number 9 because this one is number 8. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to apply it, and it's going to skip me out of here again, and I can close these two off actually now, and you'll see the errors have gone away. I'm going to do the rest of them now and speed the video up so you're not sat here watching me doing it, but just simply do what we've done in these 2 layers and do it for the rest of them which have an error on them. I'll be back shortly. Okay, welcome back. Now we've completed this, our material should be ready. So if we simply hit apply to our master material, it will take some compiling to do now. It's going to compile all the shaders again and possibly save the engine or save your level. I'll come back to build worlds now. You can see that we've got all our masks still visible. And now we're blending, slow this down a bit, we're blending based off height. If I go ahead and click on the landscape, I'm going to open the details panel and double click on my material instance. We'll drag this over there and we'll squeeze it in a little bit like so. We'll just drag this up like that. Okay, so we don't need the textures just now, so I'll close these down just to create space. And in my slope main options, you'll see at the bottom I've got slope main height blend. It's set to 1 as default, and as the slope base options right at the bottom, I've got slope base height blend. And let's just preview this one down here, which should be my ground main. I've got height blend there. Okay, so we are lagging a little bit, but this will be sorted out shortly. When I explain what's coming in the next video. Okay, so here I'm looking at my slope main. This at the bottom here is my slope base, and this here is my ground primary. Okay, so if I come to ground primary height, just put a 0 in there. Yeah, and 2, 3, 5, 50, 1, 0. It's not particularly working that great. Let's go ground second. Let's go 0, 5, 50, minus 1. Oh, we're seeing some action there. 0, 2, 50, 100. It's not particularly working how I thought it would work. Let's come up here to my slope base, change this to 0. It is working. If you watch these rocks here now, it is working. If I hit a 1, and a 2, 3, 50, there we go. 20, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100. Yeah, it's obviously stopping around 20. Yeah, 20, 15, 10, 1. Yeah. So now we're blending based off our height, which is a nice little blend. So if I put a 5 in there, Looks like a nice blend, and that's our slope base, which is that straw stony looking stuff. Height flow, let's go to slope main. Let's change this to a 5. -1. Yeah. -2. -3. 50. Yeah, it's definitely blending. 1, 0, 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there you go. And now we're getting some nice blend of our height. As you can see here, we're getting height blending between our slope main and our slope base. It's quite nice. And I think, oh no, wait there. I've got one more thing to do to showcase. What I want to do is give us the ability to paint on our landscape with whatever layer we want. To do that, we're going to drag off this output of our blend standard, of our last blend standard. I'm going to type landscape. Escape. Oh wait there. What's going on here? Let me right click. Layer. Landscape. Oh, there it is. Landscape layer blend node. This is what we need. Okay, there's a reason why I couldn't find it. Okay. So now what I want to do is apply all these layers to this landscape layer blend. What I'm going to do, because otherwise the video will be really, really long, I'm going to build it up now, the layer blend node, and I'm going to add maybe the ground primary and the ground second to this, and then you just copy what I've done here for the rest of them, how many ever layers you have. But the first thing I want to do is add the whole chain as a whole. So if I click on the plus, and this is my first one, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to call this auto, because this is going to be our auto layer. And I can simply just drag off there into there and drag that into there, like so. I'm going to move this to about here. Yeah, I'll leave it there actually. Okay, so now I've got our layer blend node. What I want to do is to get them in some sort of particular order. I hit apply now. This may work, it may not. I already have the layer infos because I've had the masks in there. And so if I come to landscape mode, it's like build. As you can see here, I've already got all the layers in there. I've got my auto layer. If I click on that and right click and just type fill layer, click fill layer, nothing will change. If I click ground primary, what is this? Oh yeah, that's just the layer info. Don't be alarmed by that, guys. That is just the layer info. There is going to be somewhere. It's because of these here. We'll get all these layers, like so, and there must be a way to delete them. Let's have a look. Let's right click that and what about individually? Oh, we'll uncheck them all actually. Let's hope to God this works. It won't allow me to delete the layers. If I click on one, yeah, it won't allow me to delete them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these. You need to copy these correctly. So I've got ground primary, ground second flow, height flow, base slope, slope base and slope main. So ground primary, ground secondary, flow, height flow. I do the same order as this. Flow mask, yeah, height flow. I may have to keep coming back and correcting it. So our first one is, I click on this, I just copy that name, like Control and C, come back to the bottom, all the way back. We'll click on this and I am going to close that one up and add a new one. And we'll call this left control and V ground primary. Let me think. Yeah, we're going to change the blend type to high blend, so we get 2 inputs. Like so, and I said I would do 2, so the next one is ground second. Let's copy this. So all the way back down to my layer blend node, and I can just simply duplicate that, to be honest, because it's already set to high blend. I'll change this to ground second. Okay, so now I've got 2 layers which we can paint onto the landscape. What I need to do is to get, we'll put that there for now, and we're simply going to drag off the material and just type RER, and we want to add named reroute declaration node, and we'll call this GP for ground primary, MA for material. Okay, and then we're going to drag off the height and do the same again, RER, add named reroute declaration node, and we're going to call this GP for ground primary, then H for height, like so. That's them 2 done. We're going to do the same for the ground second, so drag off the material section, RER, add named reroute declaration node, and this is G2 for ground second dash MA. So I put a dash in the others, yep. And then drag off the height, RER, again, add named declaration reroute node, whatever they bloody called. Then G2 dash H, like so. And all I need to do with these now is just to come down to our layer blend here, and we need our ground primary MA, which is our material. We're going to right click, go to named reroutes, and we're looking for GP MA, which is our material. We could drag that into there. Then we're going to right click again. We're going to go to GPH, which is our height, and drag that into the height ground primary. We're going to right click again and go on to G2 MA, which is our material, and go to ground second and right click, name reroutes, and G2H for height. Okay, so I've done 2 layers there. My machine is really slowing down at the minute. I'll tell you why shortly, and I apologise for how long this tutorial is up to now, but I did want to clear most of it up today. So now it's blending shaders, and that should be done. I'll come back here, you'll see now I've got a ground second showing up. If I go back to select, just like back to landscape mode, if you'll see now the layers have gone. I've got my auto layer, I've got 2 ground primaries. That's because one is spelt wrong. Primary is that, so I'm looking for primary. Yeah, that's right. What's that layer blend saying? So where is this layer? Primary. What a name. I've got ground primary there and ground second. So that is somewhere. So back up here. Ground primary. Primary. Have a look in here. I can't see being anything in here. No. That's a little strange. It is a little strange, that. Let's have a look in here. Did I delete them all? Zoom right out. You can see that I'm really running slow. Like I say, I shall notify you why in a second. The layer stack's gone. Yeah, I find that a little odd. Primary. Yeah, primary. That's right. Come there. Welcome to paint. If I delete this layer, Right, so I've got my auto, ground second, ground primary, which I want to go above that. And I'll come out of this landscape mode now and then come back into it because it'll reset the information. That's gone if I come to manage, and now it's gone. Okay, so now I've got these layers here, which is fine. This is just indicating that I can re-import them masks that we talked about at the beginning of the tutorial back into here. But now I've got that sorted out, I'll come back to paint, and if I click on my ground primary, and I shall give it its layer info as well. And now, where's that squiggly bit gone? I think it would have gone now because I've corrected the issue. I can just now paint into my landscape that ground primary. So let's turn that brush size up a little bit and the strength up of some. And as you can see now, I can paint my layers down onto the ground wherever you may feel fit. I could just go around here, and I can click on my ground second as well, turn down the brush size and just come through here, select the shaders compile, and I can just bring this round. This is also, if you set this up, a good indication. Select a certain part of your landscape and it'll give you a good indication of what layer is what. Got kind of a smiley face there. Okay, so that is that for the landscape material. By now, guys, you should have something of a landscape material that you can now physically see and use. Now we've got the ability to paint our layers. We've got this ability now with a proper setup of our layer stack, and we now give us the ability to blend in between each layer. If I get really close, you'll see we're getting a good amount of height blending. I'm seeing some of the ground second with the ground primary there. You're getting a good amount of blending there with that. Okay, so that's towards the end of the video. I apologise that it's been a long video. I just wanted to come on and rectify any problems people are having in the Build World series. I do again apologise for any misconception. It was no intention of my own. I would have ended up making this video anyway if I had not got sidetracked with the water shader series and the asset master material series, and that is the reason I'm apologising. One more thing before I end the video. In the next video for Build Worlds on this landscape, if I come to the top here and click on Lit, come to Optimize View Modes, and we're going to click on Shader Complexity, and just let this compile a moment. Okay, so as you can see, we've got two colours on screen. We've got green and red. Okay, so at the bottom of the bar, this shows you the complexity of the shader you're using. Being white is extremely bad. If I turn around, you'll see here that I've got pinks, bright reds and whites. That is the water shader. Don't be alarmed by that. That's just how complex they are in general. It'll look like that in any kind of form anyway, so it doesn't really matter about that. But the pink and the whites indicate how heavy them shaders are on instructions and heavily slow down your scene. But as you can see, the rest of my landscape is red, and if we use this indication bar at the bottom, you'll see green is good, and then it's getting to bad, and we're just past the word bad, and we're now stretching into the pink. As you can see, this is going to a bright red. This is where I've just been painting multiple layers using the paint tool, and you can see it's quite bad. Okay, that's making my eyes crazy, so I'm going to switch back to lit mode. And now the point I'm making with that complexity I've just showed you, this landscape shader is quite complex. It doesn't look like it, but you've got to think of everything that goes into material layers, all the logic inside the logic masters and all this good stuff. All that is accounted into this landscape shader. So in the next video, I want to apply runtime virtual textures into this shader. And what runtime virtual textures does, it will store the information of your landscape layers into a texture itself, one texture on its own, and it'll apply the information to that landscape once it needs to, and that drastically reduces the shader complexity of your landscape. I have covered this in a previous video, but I am going to do another video for the build world section, or series if you like, in which I add a virtual texture ability to this landscape, which will in turn turn this, where have you gone, lit, optimize view modes, shader complexity, it will turn most of this to a more darkish to lightish green, because it is a large landscape, but it will turn it to more of a greeny colour than bright red. So yeah, hopefully, like I say, I've rectified a few things in this video in which we now can produce multiple masks onto our shader. If I come over here, you'll see now we're getting multiple layers like this. And like I said earlier on in the video, don't be mistaken by the madness of these textures. That's down to you as an artist or a person who's trying to make this landscape. Go in Quixel Bridge, navigate through there, look at all the surfaces and textures. Aim for surfaces, don't get like decals on that to put in your landscape shader. Just look at surfaces and import a load. It doesn't cost anything, it's completely free. Import a load and just open your material instance. Come to details, double click material instance, and just make sure you tick where you can apply that texture to, and just simply drag and drop textures up and down. Keep in mind the slope main, and just apply these textures into your material instance. One will stand out to you, and then the next one will stand out, and eventually you'll work out that you have quite decent textures. It won't look as crazy as all this, and then you can come here, open material instance again, and you can come in here, and don't forget you could change the slope main height blend, and we could scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you've got your landscape blend in here as well, which will obviously blend your masks together. Okay guys, hopefully this was helpful. I apologise for any misconceptions, I apologise for the length of this tutorial, but hopefully I've rectified a lot of things with the landscape shader itself. If I have and it's helped you massively and you're back up to scratch, then hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and look forward to the next video where we cover virtual textures. I'll see you soon.